are really honored to have you here. Good afternoon to one and all present here. Welcome to the second episode of Litigation, Stalwarts in Courtroom with none other than VIKRAMJIT BANERJEE, sir. It's an honor to have you here, sir. Before starting with the session, I would like to introduce you all to Samvaad. Samvaad is a student-led initiative by the students of Dr B.R. Ambedkar National Law University, Sonepat, which has been conceptualized as a social-legal discussion forum to widen the horizons of public discussion. The idea behind the establishment of Samvaad encapsulates the three Ds, that is, debate, discuss, and devise, envisaged with discussions on topics that affect the world while creating an inclusive bilingual society that provides an ideologically neutral platform is our motto. And from here, we have begun a journey of opening a cross cultural dialogue. Now, without further ado, I would like to invite Mishi Gupta to introduce us to the series and introduce our honorable speaker for the session. Over to you, Mishi.
Okay, sir, can you confirm if I'm audible?
Yeah, you're perfectly
Thank you.
audible.
A very good evening, sir. Today, I welcome you all to the second episode of our series. So, to begin with it, I would first like to introduce our series once again to all of you. As we all know, litigation is a process of taking the dispute to a court of law. The dispute arises when parties cannot agree between themselves about the fair and proper outcome. So, they present their respective cases to the court for its judgment. These cases are either presented by us or by themselves in some cases. We all have a bit or a piece of knowledge about the real world procedure for this. But to exactly introduce ourselves to this dream career of ours, we thought to introduce this series, Litigation, Stalwarts in Courtroom. So to begin with today's agenda, I would like to introduce our eminent speaker of the day, Mr. VIKRAMJIT BANERJEE, Additional Solicitor General, Supreme Court. Sir is NLS Bangalore 1997 graduate. He is the youngest in the batch of the three new Additional Solicitor Generals who has been appointed at the Supreme Court. Sir is also the first NLU graduate to make it to the post of ASG. Sir was made Nagaland's Advocate General in 2015, a senior by the Guwahati High Court in 2016, and Sir was assigned with the post of Additional Solicitor General in March 2018. Sir is also the member of BJP's legal cell. He has even co-edited a book in 2008 titled The Truth About Teesta Setalwar. At end, all I can say is thank you so much, sir, for accepting our invite and giving us the opportunity to interact with you today. We are really grateful for your presence, sir.
Thank you. Should I start? And am I audible?
Yes, so you're perfectly audible. Yeah,
Okay.
we can go
Thank you.
any way you like.
Yeah. Thank you very much. It's a great honor, and I think you've been too wonderful about me. I don't think I deserve all that. So thank you. And it's wonderful to speak at an event like this because you can, of course, speak directly to a lot of people and a lot of young students and young people who've got possibly brighter ideas than we have. That being said, I think what I was asked to speak on today is, litigation during the pandemic and post-pandemic world. That's an extremely, in some ways, a very controversial topic, especially for people in the profession, especially in the areas of litigation. There are reasons for that. One is the entire conception of going digital, like everywhere, from physical to digital, is controversial. It is controversial for a number of reasons. Number one, because any new technology, whether it be the steam engine when it was first invented, whether it was trains when they were first invented, telegraph when they were first invented, it's always controversial. the largest reason for that, because it dislocates people. It puts a lot of people out of work. It puts a lot of people, what they were working from, to get used to a completely different situation where a lot of them may not be completely comfortable. There are some people who do take advantage of it, but it's largely the young, and that's happened. It's not a new thing. This has happened during the course of history. So it is an extremely tumultuous time. It's a very, very difficult time for the courts, especially because the courts were forced during the pandemic to go actually digital. I must confess, amongst my friend circles, I am known to be a person who has always been extremely into digital technology. So I'm the wrong person to actually speak about, because they think I'm too gung-ho about digital. And I've always been very gung-ho about digital. And I'll tell you an anecdote. Even when everything was physical and there was no question of anything being digital, I would invest a lot in technology, and I would always take my notes down whenever in court on digital note writing systems with a stylus and a tablet. So much so, it used to be a standing joke amongst my seniors who I would brief. Are Vikramjit ko bolo, he will never have a pen with him. If he's completely, he doesn't remember a thing without his cell phone or his iPad, because he takes down everything there. So amongst my friends and amongst my senior colleagues whom I briefed, whom I worked with, Vikramjit has always been very involved in digital technology. So I'm actually the wrong person. So you won't get, I will try to balance what I would say, because of course I've heard what the other side has to say, because being involved in the profession, being in the post which I hold, and being involved in public life, and as well as a senior advocate, you get to hear all sides of the story. So I'll try to put forward what others have to say, but I must, disclosure comes first. I'm not the perfect person to speak about, because I, in some ways, have my mind made up. There have been some permanent changes and some changes which are now being debated. The permanent changes is which has happened because of the virtual courts, which have now become de rigueur or become absolutely a part of our daily lives, especially in the Supreme Court, is the question of filing. And I think those changes in filing are here to stay. The Supreme Court has now made it very clear that all filing has to be digital. So you have to do it online. That's easy, because that makes us, you can have access to all documents at any point of time. The moment it is filed actually digitally, I can have access to it. And if you have a hearing the next day, access to the other side's application is extremely important, because a lot of times it happens that the other side, deliberately or not so deliberately, does not disclose their applications or their documents with you. So to have access of that immediately is incredible. It also helps, I think, the Supreme Court or the court to go digital, which means go paperless, which means, there is space for it. Because if you've ever, I don't know how many of you have ever attended court, I think the large part of the court is just stacked and stacked and stacked and stacked with files. I practiced in Kolkata High Court, and I practiced in the Supreme Court. And after the court has gone digital, I think there are huge empty spaces which have opened up. Because of filing, old files, every file. And in Calcutta, you would have files, if there are record rooms where you had files from 1875 and things of that sort. And everything was actually put in paper, and those files were available. Because, who knows when it could be referred to. So it's better that those things are converted into, digitally. It converted rather than be kept in files. So to that extent, the court has also been insisting, saying that this is a change which will stay, and insisting that different courts filing be only through digital mode. You've heard the Supreme Court judges making a statement that we want to push this digital filing all across, and we want to come to a time where filing will only be digital. But of course, The other side of it is what they have to figure out, because the judges themselves are not, all of them are not too used to reading digital documents, like the lawyers. But judges are like 20 years older than me. And to me, it's difficult. To people of my generation, it's difficult. So you can understand, of course, there are exceptions, and there are exceptional judges who are into digital technology, who sit with their laptops, who consult their laptops. Some of them sit with their laptops in court. And Delhi High Court, I know, original side is completely digital. So when the litigation happens, the judges have computers in front of them on which they have read their documents. That is not the case everywhere. In Supreme Court, that is also not the case, because Supreme Court judges are maybe, because they're slightly even older than High Court judges. So to them, computer digitization, they are of a generation where computer is still a necessary evil. It's not an unnecessary evil like the generation before them, like my father's generation. They would think computerization is an unnecessary evil, and evil straight away. But they are of a generation where they think that it's a necessary evil. It has great things which you can do with it. Internet has great things which you can do with it. But, we are not very comfortable with it. And I've heard this a number of times. So, even if they don't say it in openly, publicly, it is in their minds. But it's interesting. I think things are changing. Their mindsets are changing. People who've been on digitally, and the Supreme Court has done marvelous work. I think incredible work, whereby for a long period of time, and as I think that every court has, by holding huge amounts of litigation digitally for literally 1.5 to 2 years. I think there are places where litigation had completely stopped, but in India it never stopped, because the judges, and I would say some of them put their lives on risk by allowing people to come and set up digital infrastructure in their houses to have regular files, and they put their lives on risk. No one will tell you this. Today, you're double vaccinated. Maybe you have monoclonal antibodies coming out. Maybe you will have Merck and Pfizer coming out with their medicines. Maybe the pandemic will be after some point of time. It seems in India it's under control. Maybe, it will be a manageable disease at some point of time. But right in the beginning, when the disease hit, it was scary. But they still attended court. They still took files. They still read files. And allowing 5, 7, 10 people in their houses regularly to sort of get those documents, to fix up the infrastructure, I think was extremely, extremely brave. So, they've done fantastic, but I know still in the back of their mind, they're not completely comfortable with online, virtual, digital technology. Next comes the controversial part. But I think that filing digitally is here to stay. Let's not, I think it's here to stay. That's across the board. That's the consensus. The next part of it is virtual courts themselves. Now, that's a controversial thing. Why? I'll go through the cons first. I'll go through what do people have, things against a virtual hearing. One is it does create, in some ways, as people will tell you, a technological divide between those who have the technology and those who don't. Because today, and this is being very frank, I'm talking about myself, it is investment centric. You get a better experience of digital technology the more you invest in digital technology. As simple as that. First of all, when the pandemic started, most people didn't even, have a computer or a smartphone or a laptop. But, over a period of time, the other side, the pro for that will say people have got that. It's like the pandemic made us do a lot of things which we're not used to. We got used to digital payments. Similarly, people got used to digital court. So they eventually got those laptops. They eventually got those smartphones. They eventually got used to using those platforms. Even those who are actually, and seniors of us who are actually hostile to the technology. It's like, but they got used to it. But the fact of the matter is, it does create a digital divide. And let's say you can have a library, people have invested in a library, but to have digital libraries at your, to use, you have to invest in that. To use, have a better experience, you have to have a very good internet connection. To have a better experience, you need good laptops, with good cameras. You need to go digital, and to help the process, you need a good software. Maybe if you want to go fully digital, like I do, and I haven't used a single paper from the time the pandemic has hit. I made it a point at that point of time saying, I'll go completely paperless. So I have for 2 years not used. In many ways, as I said, my experience is a little bit of a joke in the Supreme Court, because all the judges in fact make, Mr. Banerjee, you are still completely digital, you still are not touching papers. So on that, but you need your very expensive software to be able to do that. It's even possible in not so expensive software, and I can, you can do that now, because such software is becoming more and more accessible. I don't want to name softwares, but these softwares, some of them are free, some of them are paid. But but it's like any digital technology. The more you pay, the better you get. So automatically, the better lawyers have better access to more legal databases, more better libraries, more digital software. So it does create, there is no doubt about that, it does create some sort of a digital divide. Two, it takes away the locational advantage of lawyers. Let's say there were lawyers who grew up and whose practice is entirely based around the High Court or the Supreme Court, because they were in different states, because they were where the High Court or the Supreme Court situated. So because they were in Delhi, because they practiced in the Supreme Court, so they had a locational advantage. The judges knew them. The clients, if they wanted to file anything, would have to go through them. Whether it be in a High Court, whether it be in Supreme Court, whether it be Delhi or Chandigarh or wherever you would be. So, or in Kolkata for that matter. Now, that location, there was a large chunk of lawyers, and I'm not running them down. They were not, may not be exceptional lawyers in that way, but they were there, and they benefited from the fact that they were locationally there. And they had vast networks of people who would send them the briefs. And this locational sort of network had been created over like 10 years, 20 years, investing in people, this network of people. That's gone. Because I can digitally file it from Calcutta. I can virtually appear with a Kolkata lawyer directly into Supreme Court. So that's gone. So there's a vast amount of people who would generate, and I'm not saying I'm not deriding it, but they survived because of the fact that they were where they were. That's gone, or that went. So there is a large pressure to move back into physical mode by this group of people, and this group of lawyers, and I'm not running them down, but it's natural. So there are people who actually their profession has been shattered. They've gone back to their villages. They've gone back to their small towns because their professions just disappeared. And for 2 years, if you are not in connection with your clients, it's over for a lot of people. So, there has been a huge suffering. There's been huge dislocation. So that's one. The second point, I think, why it's difficult is because it's difficult to change one's ways. If you're used to something, especially for older people, for something for ages, and you're told tomorrow you're going to have to adopt to a completely different technology, it's difficult. It's extremely difficult. We know, I don't know, I don't think you're too young, so you wouldn't remember when the banks switched over to computerization. There were like long strikes. There were huge long strikes because people were just against computers. in 84, 86, people were against computers. They said computers will take up a job. So when I used to be taught computers in school, my teachers would tell me jobs will not be taken, which is not true. Jobs were taken away. The clerks were eventually they disappeared, but they were replaced by other people. So they were replaced by other sets of skills. But that's a problem. But that is okay for us to say in the long term, everything is going to be fine. But those who suffered it, it's a human suffering. So it's very easy to say, no, 2 people will be out of a job, but 2 more people will get jobs. But those 2 people who lost their jobs, it's not nice. It's not funny because their families depended upon it. It's happened everywhere in the world. So 3, technology is not stable. That's the difficult thing because internet connections are not stable. So in the middle of a brilliant argument where the judge is against me, when I'm on the verge of clawing back the judge slowly to support to my point of view, and the connection goes. It's happened to me. It's like I've worked for judges saying, no, there is no case. And I'm working on it. You look at this document, look at that document. I'll show you this provision. And just when I'm getting the judge turn around and, okay, Mr. Banerjee, maybe I think, and cut, the connection is gone. And by the time I've come back, I've lost the judge because it's that moment when you could have turned the judge around. So, and technology is not stable. And it's not only the internet connection, in Supreme Court, I don't know how many of you know, we started off from something called Video, which is an app, which was good. We worked on for it for some time. Every high court has its own app. So some work on something called Blue Jeans, which is quite nice. It's a nice app. It's a nice app. I think some work on Jitsu, one work on Microsoft Teams. Calcutta, I think, works on Microsoft Teams. Cisco WebEx, Delhi High Court, and now Supreme Court has switched over to Cisco WebEx. Everyone functions on there, and not all of them perform as well. Zoom used to be the original one, but now everybody seems to, because have got out of Zoom. But so that's a problem. But video was the original sort of interface platform on which this used to be done, and people have opted out of video because video couldn't deliver, and there would be problems with video. I'll tell you one problem which I had with video. There were 2 apps on which video used to function. One for larger courts where it could handle larger volumes of things, and one lesser. So lesser volumes of people in the court. So I would have the same app. I would have 2 apps of video, and one would operate out of my cell phone operated well on my cell phone and the operating system that I had. And one I had to actually open a laptop to operate, because it would work well on a laptop and not work on a cell phone as well. But now but it's a process. Now I would say, on the other hand, that they managed to sort of and it's sad that we are going to give it up right now when we just work through all those glitches. Because with technology, you slowly even out the glitches and slowly sort of soften the edges to make it work. So today, now we have sort of made it work, and it's going to be sad that in some ways we're going to go back to your arguments. The 4th, people will tell you, people want to get back. Court is an experiment, it's an experiential thing. So people meet each other, people talk to each other in corridors, people learn from each other. Practice is something which you learn from being present and from your seniors to see other people. That goes in a virtual thing. And it takes away the courtroom experience. There is no courtroom experience in a virtual court. What can you have? You're sitting in your bedroom and you're arguing. What courtroom experience can you have? You don't have that. So that takes away from that. The judges and lawyers are torn about that, because the court adds a certain majesty to the law, which obviously a virtual courtroom does not have. And right in the beginning when they started, people were wearing their vests and underclothes and appearing in court. because, they were not used to, appearing from their bedrooms in the Supreme Court. So, of course, in the court, but all this I'm saying is that we had to work through them. And now that's fine. Now everybody knows at 10:30, you wear your clothes and you sit in front of your computer and argue. So these things have been sorted out. And lawyers will tell you arguments are never the same. I think one of my good friends made a very interesting observation. He said, when you appear before the court, when you appear before judges, you can see their eyes, you can see their intonations, you can see their gestures, and you can therefore sort of make out as to whether they are inclined to take up an argument, whether they're willing to accept an argument, whether they're not willing to accept an argument. You don't have that anymore in a virtual thing. I don't know. I personally think that, yes, it's difficult to judge, but it's also, you have to then hone your skills so that you can understand by change of intonation of voices as to, because you can't see, judges are too far away, so you can't actually see the whites of their eyes or the smile on their faces. But humans express emotions through, the way they speak. So, you judge it by the way they speak, whether it's acceptable, whether it's not acceptable. Another thing is, as senior advocates, we would have a large number of juniors assisting us. So if you missed a document, you would have 3, 4 other juniors who would say, sir, we have this document. Why don't you show this to the court? You may have the point, but you may not have the document. Here, when I'm sitting alone and I'm arguing, but even if I have a WhatsApp running, with my juniors immediately suggesting pages in which to argue and which not to argue. But by the time the WhatsApp comes, the judge has left that point. And a lot of times you just don't have that document before you. That's the process. There are more, I can narrate all of that, but in summary, but what are the pros? I think the pros are, it has given access. It has given access to litigants. It has given access to lawyers. So the lawyers in the smallest courts have been able to appear before Supreme Court. So that's been a great thing. So you have lawyers from district courts who wouldn't ever be able to have the courage to appear before Supreme Court because the process is so impressive and so daunting. So now all they do is switch on and they have argued. Some of them are good. Some of them are competent. A lot of the high court lawyers are very, very competent. The litigants, for the first time in their entire lives, have been able to sit in their houses and see how the litigation, how the matters are argued in court. What their lawyers are saying, how the judges are treating them. So justice is not only about justice being done, it's also, it has to be seen to be done. So I think in many ways, this has given that sort of, an access. I personally think it allows you to get more work done. So in court, anyone who's gone to court, I don't know how many of you have gone to court, half of the work is just waiting for your matters. And your clerks will run around and say, sir, court number 14 में आपके 28 number matter है, sir, आप वहाँ पे जाके खड़े हो जाओ. So you go and wait for the matter to come up, and then you chat, and then your matters sort of happen. But you wait for a very long period of time, and it's absolutely waste. And I can assure you that's completely waste. You spend most of the time chatting and talking about others and discussing the personal lives of other lawyers and your clients and things of that. You can do away with that. At home, you finish. You can work on other stuff. You can other professional, personal. You can sit and if you have a gap of 2 hours, you can sit and basically teach your son who's also virtually going to school about something, or you can do some shopping for your wife. I shouldn't be saying this, but then you can spend it on different things if you want to. So you can use your time more constructively. That's what I think. It's not all, you don't have to sit in your uniform and wait for the matter to come up. It's also, you can work outside the confines of the court. So you can have the flexibility of how to approach a matter. You have the flexibility of you're not constrained uh, by other people. I'll give you examples. For example, when you appear in physically, you're dependent upon your juniors, you're dependent upon your clerks, you're depending upon, yeah, brief aaya ke nahi hai, note printed out hua ke nahi hai. You don't have to do that. You email your judgments which you're going to cite next day, you make your own notes on your iPad and you go and argue the matter. So you're not dependent. You have virtual conferences. The great thing about is there is no restriction of time. You can have a virtual conference getting prepared for a matter. I'm very comfortable with virtual conferences now because I have a virtual conference exactly like I'm having with you, and I will argue the matter. I will mark the briefs digitally on my computer, and which you can. You have the technology, you have your stylus, and you can just mark it and appear and argue with them. And people are willing. So I'd say I deal a lot with government officials because of my job. Government officials would be very reluctant to come to the conferences, even at 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock. Now you call them saying, I have had government officials saying that, sir, 11 baje bhi we are awake, hum baith jayenge conference. All they have to do, they can go home, they can eat, they can enjoy themselves. All they have to do is open the laptop and you can have a conference. It irritates the oldest generation a lot, but that is how it is. So you're not also feeling bad. Like say your juniors, especially in Delhi. I have women juniors in my office, and in Delhi, you know how things are. So I would tell them, even though they would be terribly reluctant to go home, saying that's a calm hai, and please don't do this. You are discriminating against us compared to the boys because you're allowing the boys to stay longer than the girls. Sir, this is not fair. I've heard this from them, but I would feel a responsibility ki 6 baje ke baad aap log ghar jao. Because as an elder, you have the responsibility to look after their safety. So now I don't have to. I said, XYZ, आप 11:30 बजे हम conference रखेंगे, आप computer के सामने रहना. So fine, and you can access everything. 3, you can have something like Dropbox, whereby you put in all your files. And one great difficulty, juniors would never get to read the files. Like say, how do juniors work with you? They read the files, they read up on the files, they argue, they see you argue. That's where they sort of make out the how you're making the arguments. Now it's very easy because all I have to do is what my office does is they just scan the brief, or sometimes, and most of the time, it comes like in PDF files anyway, by email. So you just put it on a Dropbox, then you have everybody in the office has access to the Dropbox. So all they have to do is just download the files, read through it. You can mark your brief, and that gets updated on the Dropbox. You can put your notes and you can put it on Evernote. Everybody has access to your notes instantaneously. So I personally think this is technology. We have to get used to it. You can't say that you're going to live in the old world. The old world is gone, like all the time. You have to, technology is going to show us the way. You can't restrict it. You have to live with it. And that's extremely important. And the profession has to update itself. The profession is in many ways very, very old. It has we're still wearing gowns which originate from the time Queen Anne died in the 1700s, and bands which come from 1200s, because the priests used to wear that band because they were the only people allowed to practice at the bar at that point of time. So we still have that heritage, but the world has changed. We'll have to change. Delivery of justice has to change. And so I think that's extremely important. I just flag mark it before I put everything up for, questions. The style of argument which you do in a virtual and a physical hearing are completely different. In virtual hearings, you have to be precise. You cannot be emotional, because if you're emotional, which we all try to make an argument in court, as they say, if you don't have a good point, if you have a good point, hammer the point. If you don't have a good point, hammer on your emotions, hammer the podium, so that it seems like you have a good point. You can't make dramatic arguments, because if you make dramatic arguments on virtual, the camera makes you look exaggerated. So if you are like too emotional, which would work in a physical setting, the judge would say, "Ye to zarur jhoot bol raha hai." So you have to, the argument style is much more restrained. You have to work at the brief a longer period of time, because you have to know the exact pages, you have to know the exact summary, exact documents. Judges have very little patience on a virtual thing, because they can switch you off, they can cut you off. And the virtual medium, there is no drama. So judges are completely focused on that matter. So their attention spans are therefore also limited there. So you have to be, you can't make the same point 3 times, and the judges will tell you that. Which you can in a general setting. You can make a point on the left, right, full stop, physical hearing. Because that gets boring, because attention spans are limited and it gets boring. It's humanly a fact. So I think it also, the other thing about it is language becomes less important. The documents become extremely important. In a physical hearing, I personally think that people who are good in English, people who can speak well, people who articulate get a much better stand in court than people who are not. But in a virtual thing, you say you come to page 35, you see this document, and that's it. So you can argue like hugely, and I can just show you the document and that will be over. So I think that is, it is in many ways. You also have to have stable technology. You have to invest in it. And as I said right in the beginning, that's extremely important. And most importantly, you have to have a very stable internet connection. So you have to invest in that tremendously. Last thing which I'm going to say is, we don't know which way it will go. We don't know whether the courts will shift back to physical hearing completely, because there is a push amongst a lot of lawyers to have full physical hearing. And this is especially exacerbated by lawyers who've been holding virtual court from their wonderful farmhouses and their houses on the beaches in Goa and stuff like that, senior advocates, which has created its own resentment amongst lawyers who actually had this entire pandemic, and I explained to you why, completely destroying their profession, their livelihood. So when they see, and now lawyers can appear in, as I said, in large number of courts together. I have in a single day appeared in the Madhya Pradesh High Court, in the Jharkhand High Court, Delhi High Court, and Supreme Court on the same day. I wouldn't be able to do, it's impossible, physically impossible to do that. If there were physical hearing, I would have to take the entire day out. Which is, I think, has been tremendously helpful. And people have got access to the best lawyers because of that. But there is a little bit of resentment. The judges are also upset, because I think the judges also want it to feel like a court. A virtual hearing with large screens, however the large screens are, doesn't seem like a court. So there is I would say, if you look at district courts, including district courts, I think a large number of lawyers actually would prefer physical hearing, but there's a vocal minority which, what I call early adopters of technology, which is always early adopters of technology, want a virtual thing to go on. How it will go, I do not know, because there is a lot of pressure to move back to physical hearing now when the pandemic seems to be on the wane. But to me, it would seem a shame, because people had managed to smoothen out the edges of rough technology. There's been huge amounts of money, both invested by lawyers as well as by the courts, in trying to improve the technology to where it is, and becomes better and better in working. So today, after investing crores into this technology and lakhs for personal lawyers to do that, If people go back to virtual sort of technology of marking by pencil and putting post-its, I think that would be quite sad. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. We truly enjoyed you speaking. I would like to request all the participants to drop their questions in the chat box, and I'll be asking them to unmute. Till then, I'll just ask some questions that we collected from the Google form.
Yeah.
Okay, the first question is, in order to build a career in litigation, what are the things that we should take care and do from the starting of the law school? And should we join a law firm or work under a district court lawyer or internships and after graduation?
That's like really complicated question. And it's not because a number of reasons why it's complicated, because there is no one pattern. Now, anyone who says there is a single pattern is wrong. At the end of the day, your path is your path. So I have seen friends of mine who graduated out of law school, went into law firms, made their money, and then switch over to becoming senior advocates and being very successful. I've seen that. I have followed myself a very, very conventional path, whereby I have started off my life as teaching in universities. Then I shifted over to working on the original side of a high court, which was in Calcutta for 7 years. Before that, before I went to do my master's in law in Britain, I also spent 1 year, very frankly, working in the district courts, and which was a very interesting experience. I think that the experience which I wouldn't give up anything for anything. It was really interesting. I hated it when I was there because the year before I had worked in Supreme Court with the then additional Solicitor General. And then I decided to go back to my hometown in Kolkata and work with a district court and a local lawyer. I just hated it when it was there because, one side you move from like really fancy chambers and air conditioned. And those days, district courts were not air conditioned. There were nothing. And the infrastructure was terrible, even worse than what it is today. And I hated it. But today, in retrospect, I've learned a lot. I've learned to have patience. It's made me a better lawyer in retrospect, but that's like 25 years down the line. You know what I mean? So, or 20 years down the line. So, but that's in retrospect. And then I moved to Supreme Court after 6-7 years. So in working in Kolkata High Court. And I worked on the original side where I learned a lot of civil procedure code. I learned original side filing. I know that. And I really value that experience. But what should you take care? I think, we tend to this is my retrospect today. And don't get me wrong. I think enjoy yourself. Enjoying oneself in law school is extremely important. So the rest of your life, you're going to be like working terribly. You have an idea, of course. You attend classes, so you have a rough idea of what you went to law school for, to have a rough idea of what the law is. But how you will be blown in law school, in your profession, is not in your hands. It's never in your hands. And I can assure you, I can give you a number of examples in my life to say that never in your hands. I ended up really liking and really practicing a subject which I actually failed in law school. And I have no compunctions in saying that. Some subjects which I just about passed, and I passed because the teacher said, because I had some great marks in some other subjects, so they would like, अच्छा ये बंदा intelligent है, मगर ठीक है उसके examination paper हम और एक बार देख लेते हैं और देखते हैं, because they were all internal exams, so देख लेते हैं अगर कुछ half marks देके कहीं पे grace करके pass करवाना सकते हैं. So I don't want to give you a wrong thing, but that's a fact, and those subjects are subjects which you ask people today at the bar about, they say, Vikram to उस subject में expert है. And subjects which I was so fond of today, I don't practice. So, so what path your career will take is not in your hands in litigation. This is, I don't think anybody, I had teachers around Mr. Jetmalani. I had lots of people who tell you they were not very good students and became very, very successful lawyers. I don't want to take names. I can only take names of myself and give you examples of myself. I know very eminent lawyers who, if you talk to them personally, they would say they were terrible students. So that's not important. But do your moves. I think do your moves. But most importantly, in law school, remember your life. You know, there are two skills which you should learn. One, of course, besides have a rough idea what the law is and have a rough idea what the subjects you're taught, is how to make friends. Because that's what's going to serve you in the profession. And how to be able to complete your work on time. The rest is irrelevant. And for litigation, grades are completely irrelevant. I'm a wrong person to give you. Of course, if you want to go to World Bank and you want to teach and you want to go to Yale and you want to go to Harvard and you want to ILI or IITs and IIT Kharagpur or National Law School and you want to be a professor, that's fine. That's good. I respect it. I've done it myself. I have great respect for those people. But for litigation, it's just not relevant. It's not relevant. It's of the best and the most intelligent, the person who went to Harvard and a person who went to a local law college, and I'm not running down any local law college, is actually equal on the same day. And I have numerous examples of these brilliant, brilliant people in my life who just bombed at the bar. And I have examples of people whom you would wonder, boss, ye pass kaise karega? Are like so eminent, and friends of mine are so eminent lawyers that if I even tell people that these people weren't good in studies, that they would never believe. No one would ever believe me. So I just keep shut to myself when people ask me, "Iske grades kitna tha?" The secrets of my friends are very safe with me.
Thank you, sir. I would like to ask Idant to unmute himself and ask the question.
Hi, sir.
Hi.
Yeah, so my question is that a lawyer, so for example, a student who has just graduated from his law school and he wants to enter into litigation, how does he do it in a system where everything is digital, where you do not have court like for the last year we had it, everything was digital? How does a person like that enter into the system?
I think it's difficult. I'm not saying it's easy. I'll tell you, and I can't talk about others. I can talk about how I sort of run my office. I run my office where I have juniors of mine who are presently for the last 2 years who've been working out of Kolkata. And they've been working on the briefs. They've been marking and sending me briefs. And I think that it depends upon the seniors. So it's works like the same thing. Like I trust my juniors to work with other lawyers who brief me, other clients who brief me. And those clients have felt it that they are confident in my juniors to brief them. So they've taken up some work themselves, some work which they have. So I don't think fundamentally there is too much of a difference as to how it functions, except the technique of it is different. But the biggest problem, because the nature of technology is such, is a little bit investment heavy to begin with. So whenever a junior joins, you would expect him to have a laptop, preferably a damn good laptop. Now, I know for large parts of India, may not be for this audience, but for large parts of India, that's a little expensive proposition to have. And because I am not generalizing, I can't generalize the rest of India by just this audience, but or me, so that's yes, it's and to have a very good internet connection. A lot of people can't afford that, so that's like slightly difficult. But otherwise, I think the nature of it is different. It's not that my juniors are out of work or some of them have really prospered well during pandemic. And some of them have been destroyed. And I had one junior of mine yesterday who was complaining how terribly the pandemic, had an impact on the person concerned. And there have been other friends of mine, other juniors of mine who are very happy in the way the pandemic panned out. So, like everywhere, that's part of life. And the profession is like that. We all should live perfectly happily ever after, but the profession is a reflection of life. But life is cruel. I'm not a person who, I'm all for it being wonderful and everybody being provided a social net and seniors being very generous and kind and nice. But on the other side, I'm very clear about when I address how I address my juniors. I say my juniors are here to learn, work, and go. They're not my employees. I don't pay them salaries. I don't pay them much. I pay them decently. I don't think I should completely deprive them, but I don't pay them much. And I encourage them to leave me after 2 years. Encourage them. Absolutely, please go. I stayed in my seniors chamber for 2 years, and I don't think you have anything to learn in a seniors chamber beyond 2 years. You ask me seriously, you haven't learned anything in a seniors chamber in 2 years, then you haven't really been attending the seniors chamber like really seriously. And you have nothing to contribute. 2 years enough. You go on your own. At the end of the day, this is just training, after which you sort of find your way. But 2 years is good enough. You see your senior arguing matters in court. You see how matters are drafted. You see in some offices, drafting is less like in mine. But you see how to, like senior advocates chamber, how to write an opinion. And if the senior is good enough, he'll give you that opportunity to do that. Yeah.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much, sir. Next question is from Jasmeet. Jasmeet, could you please unmute yourself and ask the question?
Hi, sir.
Hi.
So my question is, how can a person who is not much confident about his viewpoints or arguments would overcome this fear in front of judges and the opposition lawyer and make good arguments against him? Like, what should the skills we should learn in the
that's why,
law school?
Anyone who tells you that they're not afraid, the 2 seconds before the case starts, is lying to you. At least I get in nowadays, not in every matter, not in the small matters where you know where it's going, but in really matters, I'm quaking inside. My hands are shaking, my legs are shaking, and then I speak. If you know your matter and you're confident of your knowledge of that matter, the only way to better it is going on doing the same thing, going on appearing. You'll be treated like horribly. I have had horrible experience when I first started off with judges. One of my colleagues at the bar, a deep, good friend of mine in Calcutta, always gives me that example that he was working in a big law firm, and I was then a lawyer who just joined in my senior chamber in Calcutta. So he briefed me, which took him a long time because he was like, which took him a lot because he was like a junior in a law firm, and he was sending work my way, who was another flunky junior. So you know how difficult it is for him to have diverted work to me. But it was nothing. I had to just stand up and just mention a matter, saying I want this matter to be listed on such a day. And I couldn't open my mouth. And the judge just passed me by. I think he was mentioning in, side by side to this person, okay, next you, next you, and next you. And I couldn't open my mouth. So he said, okay, one afterwards. So it happens, you only get better by doing it. And I still get the shivers. I can assure you, when I appear in a matter where a lot of things are at stake.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much, sir. Now I would like to ask Suryadev Mohan to unmute himself and ask the question.
Hi,
Hello,
Suryadev.
sir.
Hi, Suryadev.
Hi, sir. Sir, my question is, sir, do you think the digital hearings are improving the efficiency of justice delivery to
I think
common?
so. I think so. I'm controversial. I'm the wrong person to ask. Because as I said, most of my seniors, and that used to be like 6 years, 7 years before the pandemic happened and we all went digital, was like Vikramjit is gung-ho digital person.
Okay, sir.
So
Thank you.
I'm the wrong person. But I think it
Oh.
has. I think it has made it more efficient. It has made more, less time consuming. It has made advocacy more focused. It has made advocacy in some ways, irrespective of the language which you speak in your articulation, much more to the point. It's like, yeah, this is your point you're raising. Here is the here is the document. Here is the judgment which I want to cite. This is the paragraph. So you don't have, like, my lords, I have to show paragraph 34, but I'll start reading from paragraph 22. Judges don't have time for that. Mr. Banerjee, come to the point right now. So you show 34. So it's like straight out to the point. So it's made it more efficient, more fast, and less human. Now that's technology.
Yes, sir, definitely.
That's technology. People, when they would ride horses, it was more human. When you started driving cars, it's less human, more efficient. So now you choose which is better. Of course, I'm sure there were more poetry written about riding horses by humans, and I can assure you, than there is about driving cars. I don't know.
Thanks, sir. Thank you. Oh, thank you for your opinion, sir.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Okay, so the next question is, as it's said that the arch of a litigation career is very big. So what's the main factor to remain persistent throughout the process, especially when you don't have cases coming and don't have a client base?
Patience. Where is that? What is that song of your generation, not my generation? I can't handle that type of music. Ki mera waqt aayega type, apna waqt aayega. So it does come. And I always say this, that it does. And I always tell my juniors, you will have those 10 years, at least. Some people have more than 10 years, but you will have those 10 years when whatever you do will turn to gold. And you have to prepare your entire career for those 10 years. What you make out of those 10 years is up to you. If you haven't prepared yourself, you will get to a certain place. If you're damn lucky, then irrespective of how you prepared, you will still make it very, really big. But you will have a golden run of those 10 years. Everybody has it in their career. I may be in the middle of some of my, you've counted in my golden, after my 10 years, I may be just over, people may not even recognize who I am. But those 10 years of what you make or break who you are will be in those 10 years. So it's like patience and preparation. And even if nothing comes your way right at the present moment, it's just like it's like you practice for the big time. That what film actor says, when you get that break, it's practicing for the break, as simple as that. And believe me, when the break will come, you will not realize that the break has come. That's the thing about a break. Then it will seem like so natural. Aise to hona hai. So a lot of people get taken in by the fact, yes, I worked so hard and it was a result of the amount of hard work. Nonsense on stilts. It's the luck. And it's like you preparing for that. So never get disheartened by the fact that you don't have work. I've had huge amounts of time where I have zero work. And I'm not giving gyan because today I have work, tomorrow I may not have work. But the fact is, you be prepared for it. You get everything in order so that when it comes, you will be straight out of the block. And what you make out of it is yours. Yeah.
Thank you so much, sir. So the next question is, with respect to technology, one might manage and get used to it in the coming times. On the other hand, how should one develop his or her practice in the capacity of independent counsel, wherein pandemic has affected the economy at large scale, and that includes prospective litigants?
Of course, I accept that, but that's not completely true. I agree with you to that extent. That there has been a shakeout, but that was initially the case, but that's not true now. Initially there was, but let me put it this way, my understanding of whatever I was, and I had a bird's eye view of that, it's not like clients were not willing to pay. There was a shakeout of smaller lawyers and consolidation for larger law firms. So a lot of my juniors who were independent joined larger law firms. Because the move, actually the work shifted, according to me, from, one can go into good or bad thing of that. You can say a more diverse market is better. Independent people were shafted and bigger people benefited. You can say all that. But actually what happened during the pandemic, during the worst time of the pandemic, now things are in many ways evening out. During the worst time of the pandemic, what happened is there was a shakeout. And as a result of that shakeout, a lot of smaller lawyers lost work, and that work shifted, or that work somehow the big law firms have a lot of work. So that's how it is. I'm not saying good or bad, but that's how it functioned.
Thank you, sir. I would like to ask Idhan to unmute himself and ask the question.
Yeah, so
Hi,
my
Idhan.
question. Yeah, hi, sir. So my question is, how do you think that the social media as a whole, has impacted the legal system? Probably my context for this, my question is that, for example, social media is probably a system, a medium where we're talking about which is the most away from government regulation. This is the farthest from government regulations.
Yeah.
So how do you think the medium, a sort of in it mass?
A lot of lawyers are on social media. I used to be extensively on social media till I had this job. I used to have very, very explosive Twitter handles, which I deleted the moment I got this government job because it's just not worth controversy. Like all of us know, I still make controversial tweets once in a while. That's how I am. I can't get out of it. Like people of my generation, I'm into social media. I keep in touch with people on social media. WhatsApp I can't do without, because WhatsApp is part of the profession. All of us know that. You get documents, you work through WhatsApp. So WhatsApp, I don't know whether it counts as something like a mail or whether it counts on social media. I don't know. It's somewhere halfway house between both. Twitter, and I'm not into Instagram and the stuff which my son and his friends are. But I'm into two things which sort of serve my purpose. One is Facebook, which is like, according to my son and whoever is on Facebook, which sort of strange person is on Facebook. All old people like my father's generation on Facebook. No one uses Facebook. But I'm still on Facebook, so I am connected to people on Facebook, my friends, sometimes professional colleagues. Twitter, I used to be very, very strongly, because like all lawyers, you're all opinionated. You have an opinion on everything. You want to express that. But I've stopped myself. I don't do it very often. Yesterday, I tweeted about a book which I read, but that's after a long period of time. And like things get really something that's like really boils inside me, that I put out 2 or 3 tweets, some of which are extremely controversial, but nothing explosive. I had an explosive Twitter account which I deleted. So you grow up, and the worst problem is what is happening in the West is people are trolling out tweets when you were like 15 and 16, and when your ideas were unformed, and putting those tweets in front of you, which you may have changed. You may have changed your views quite radically after that. But I think it's okay. I don't see any reason. A lot of my friends are, irrespective of ideology, some are left, some are extreme left, some are extreme right, and they're all on Twitter, so they tweet, and it's good. It's fun. It makes good entertainment, but never take social media seriously. A lot of us do that. Never take it seriously. It's a joke. It's social media. People forget that it's make-believe. Everybody's happy on Facebook, however sad lives they may lead in person. Everybody's intelligent on Twitter, until you meet them. So never take everything seriously. Yeah.
Thank you so much, sir. Sir, if you have the time, can we take a few more questions?
Okay.
Thank you, sir. I would like to ask Tejas to unmute himself and ask the question.
Good evening, sir. My name is Tejas.
Hi, Tejas.
Hi, sir. So I wanted to ask, since you already mentioned how opinionated lawyers are, so how does political pressure outside the court, or sometimes even happen that sometimes there are cases where the other party is in very strong status politically or economically. How does that affect a lawyer? How does that affect a litigant's work, or to take a case or decide which ones to take? And my second question is also related to it. How does the outside pressure of courts affect a lawyer's decision to take work?
What is outside pressure of the court? I'm not very clear on that.
For example, something happened. For example, media or people's opinion, and like we also talked about.
Okay, I don't think it should. I don't think it should. It never has to be. But I understand that after I leave this job, and this is conversations which I've had with myself, that the world has changed. Social media has changed the world a lot. Previously, and I've had this conversation with really big lawyers, and I don't want to take their names, they're all aggrieved by the fact that before social media came, they could genuinely, because there is a rule, which I don't know whether you know, which is called the cab rank rule, which basically means that the lawyer is like a taxi cab. A counsel is like a taxi cab. Means anybody who comes up to you and wants you to do their matter, and if there is no conflict, you have to do that matter. That's called, like, in Britain, if you're a barrister and someone comes and you sort of don't take up that matter and you're free and there is no conflict, it's misconduct. It's like, but here, in the age of social media, and you are aligned in some ways politically, then you can be attacked for taking up cases which may not be actually down the side which you support. So I have seen big lawyers and lawyers who are aligned politically and who are very successful politicians, as well as very successful lawyers, complain about it, because increasingly the space of being able to be a good lawyer and being a successful politician or political person is conflicts increasing. And I think the biggest reason is what you sort of said is because of social media. Otherwise, as for social media taking up a controversial case and social media is against you and banging you on that really doesn't matter. You don't never pay attention to social media. Social media is a joke. So if I took social media seriously, there are lots of matters which which I've appeared, which are controversial, and you don't never take it seriously. Yeah.
Thank you so much, sir. I would like to ask Shivi to unmute herself and ask the question.
Hi, Shivi.
Good afternoon, sir. Hello.
Hi.
It was great being here in this lecture, and thank you for being so generous with the insight. I have a question, maybe very basic, but what do you think about the gender disparity in judiciary? Like, there's huge, alarming gender disparity.
There is.
There
is. So what do I think of it? It shouldn't be.
What I'm trying to ask here is, what do you think are the reasons? Like, it's been a long time now.
Okay, I'll address it. No, I don't think it's a long time. I don't think it's a long time at all. Because when I joined the profession, the percentage of women in the profession was very few, very less. And that I'm speaking about in 97, 98. Most lawyers were, for the want of a better word, and I'm not using a word derogatorily, but I'm saying this, most women lawyers at that point of time were like really basic lawyers, and they were not like stupendously, there were one or two very stupendously articulate, intelligent women lawyers. There were, even at that point of time. And they got short shrift. They got short shrift. But there weren't that many. I know because, I know what my friends were, and some of them.
That is what I'm
were
talking about. Why they were not?
No, but
Why?
they had other priorities, different generation. People in. I'll give you this conversation could apply to so many people whom I know, whom I think was brilliant women in law school who studied with me. Brilliant people. And I still have great respect for the intelligence, their articulation, their abilities. They never joined, they got married. And, and a friend of mine, we were discussing, and, getting married is not a problem. All of us get married. That's not an issue. But they get married and they became housewives. And we were discussing with a friend of mine, who's, again, very big lawyer in Supreme Court, and we were discussing our people whom we knew in the law school. We said it's just a waste of a seat. But on the other side, and I must flag this, I made this argument with a friend of mine who was, again, very brilliant, and she decided to give up everything and become a housewife. So I told her exactly this. I said, XYZ, you wasted a seat. Yeah, what nonsense is this? Why did you? Because you deprived someone else to get that seat. They would have gotten that seat. So he said, who are you to judge me? Why do you judge me for what I do? If I'm happy to be a housewife, I'm happy to be a housewife. Why do you judge me? Who are you to judge me? And as for wasting that seat, he said, the other person didn't qualify. I qualified. I took the exam. I was capable. I was smart. I was intelligent, whatever. I qualified for that. What I choose to do with it is my choice. And then they gave me an example. Aren't there lawyers from law school who graduated and have done theater acting or done painting or gone into IAS or done, you could say that they wasted their seat, but you are not going to say it because according to you, being a housewife is of less importance. Okay, I just shut up after that. I don't make such comments in my thereafter. So, whenever people...
I would like to ask something more here. Like, is there any thought or any, prejudice in the mind of people that a woman being a lawyer is not a good lawyer? Do women get equal amount of clients?
Not anymore. From my generation, I think it started off on my generation, maybe a little bit earlier. That's not there. At least in Supreme Court, it's not there. There are very, very competent women lawyers, and they're doing extremely well. But I think judiciary is, you join us at a certain age, and now the bar demographic composition, I don't know what, for example, I don't know about Kolkata. Kolkata had a different composition, but in Supreme Court, I can assure you that the composition of senior advocates...
Because the scenario at the ground in the district courts is like just very, very different.
Yeah,
you don't find women lawyers.
It takes time. In Calcutta, it was exactly the opposite, by the way. There were more people in district courts, and therefore they wouldn't be highlighted ever. So I know more people worked at the district courts for a very long period of time, and they would never get highlighted. So you could be a very competent lawyer in the district court, but if you are not a high-flying, cool lawyer in the High Court, then you're like, yeah, ये तो serious lawyer नहीं. अच्छा, इसको filing only पता है. इसको seriously मत लेना. And people were like really competent. I can name 3 of them who were like really competent, but it was slotted like that. But there is an inherent, there was, I hate to use, these are words which I don't like. What is that? Structural injustice and things of that sort. But I think things are changing. I think that things are radically
That's
changing.
nice
I've seen
to
my
hear.
friends, at least in Supreme Court, I've seen my friends. 2 of them, 2 close friends of mine, or 2 friends of mine, have become additional Solicitor Generals along very swiftly with me, after me, and things like that. Very competent, and I have great respect for both of them. One, I wanted to correct this, is younger than me. So I'm not the youngest. There have been people appointed after me who are younger than me. One of them is very, very competent woman. One is slightly, age we should not discuss, got appointed a little bit after me. She's a little bit older than me, but again, extremely competent and possibly has more work than I do individually. Both of them have more work than I do. So, very, very competent, doing extremely well. And there are lots more. I know lots
Thank
more.
you so much,
I have
sir,
juniors.
for the
I have juniors of mine.
reassurance.
No, I'm saying that. But the fact is, it's up to you. Things will change. Things are changing. But I think it will take some time to get reflected in the judiciary. Though attempts are being made to even the odds. But like everything, when change comes, it takes time to actually reflect. You can fix quotas and get people appointed. You know what I mean? That's one way of doing it. But the other way of doing it is like it actually
We want the
changes and you
capable
encourage
and the
it.
deserving one.
No, but
there.
who is capable and who's deserving, that is another dodgy thing, as I say. Because people are capable and people are incapable, are not so capable depending on who you know and who's your father and who's your grandfather and who, we know how the profession functions. So capability is another nonsense thing. But it's luck and getting that break. But people with good, who are articulate, who are smart, and who can put across a point of view, who know the law, there are increasing number of them, and a lot of them come from law schools. Some of them come from three-year courses also. So I shouldn't be saying that. They've done well. They're doing well, and I think things are changing. Yep.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Shivi. Sir, I would like to ask Nikhil to unmute himself and ask the question.
Hi, Nikhil.
Hi, hello, sir.
Hi.
Sir, do you think judges gets affected by the public sentiments, like strong public segments against one's topic?
You're making me. That's a controversial question, by the way. I'm not supposed to answer that. But I think it's all human. We are all human. We all watch television. We all read the newspapers. That's a very old question, which goes back to what is the nature of judges which you want. That's a really old debate which goes to the heart of the Anglo-Saxon common law jurisprudence of what it is to be a judge. Some believe judges should exist in a bubble and they should not be at all be influenced. And there are some judges who don't even go and meet at to weddings because they want to be in a bubble. And there are others who are socially engaged.
Okay.
But do you social engagement? Yeah.
But do you think the opposition advocate or litigator, he also gets affected by that, protection of his life, वगैरह?
As in? Not very clear. Give me an example. Give me an example.
Like we take a case of like Sabrimala judgment or like a CA case when when a particular community is against one's topic. So how will a litigator will I'm unable to explain at the moment.
No, I'm telling you, you take it, you address it, you do it. Treat it like a legal problem.
Yeah, okay, thank
I
you.
can assure you that I've done very, very controversial cases. But see, it also depends upon you. And any controversial matter which you do, and I'll tell you this, and this is what I sort of believe in. You may believe in differently, others may tell you differently. Whatever matter I appear, I never give a press interview.
Okay.
And people will come and tell me, the press, I can assure you, will tell me. And I used to appear in press very frequently because of the fact that I was associated with, with the political party. So I used to appear in press very frequently. I don't know how many of you remember at one point of time, before I had this job, it was like literally every day would be 2-3 interviews for news channels. But gone, and press, like so many times, will call me up and say that, sir, I'm sorry, the moment I don't have this job, I'll be more than willing. I'm sure they may not be willing to call me at that point of time, but I will be more than willing to appear in your channel, but I'm sorry, I can't. And that's what I learned from my senior. He says, who was again a very, very prominent lawyer in Kolkata. He said, never give an interview on the matter which you appear in. You speak on other stuff. There are other matters which you can be called and you speak on them. I don't, because I have this job, but you speak on other stuff. But in a matter which you are appearing, ethics demands that unless your client wants you to make a statement to the press, you don't do that. And client it may require you to make a statement to the press on behalf of your client, but only on that and nothing else.
Okay, thank you, sir. And
sometimes you will be asked by the client to make the statement. That also happens. Sometimes the government also sometimes may want you to put a point of view forward. And then you make that statement. You take whatever limited questions. Yeah.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you, Nikhil. So the last question of the session is, as you mentioned, patience is the key of the golden door in litigation. But for a first-generation lawyer who does not have a concrete financial support, what can be some ways to keep the funds coming when there's a tough stone like this, a pandemic, in their way?
Oh, really difficult. Really difficult. But you be associated. Don't go off on your own. Join a chamber. The problem with today's generation is everybody in the age of internet and the age of having access to, these wonderful search engines on the net which give you access to legal material, think that they don't need seniors. And as one prominent judge used to call them Swayambhu, they exist because they exist. You don't need training. People think that they don't need training. They're capable, they're efficient, they're capable, and they're articulate, and they know the law, so they can all argue matters. Good people have done that, but I don't agree with it. I think you should join a chamber, and you should join anybody's chamber. But it's important that you sort of good chamber. The better the chamber, the better. If you're a first-generation lawyer, I don't think that makes a difference. Sure, success may come later. You will possibly see others who are second-generation lawyers and third-generation lawyers and fourth-generation lawyers getting ahead of you in the initial few years. And that leads to a lot of frustration because, a lot of us think, mera kya hoga? And they have so many matters and I don't have any. And this is like terribly unfair. I am so smart. I'm much more smarter than these people and they have so much work and I have not much. But it all evens out in the end. And that's my experience in life. But you have to weather through that. And that's where patience comes in. For a first-generation lawyer, patience is much more important. And not looking at others, not getting frustrated by others' success is extremely important. When and I'll say this before I sort of conclude, when I shifted to Delhi from Calcutta, and I started again from scratch because, of course, I had my practice in Calcutta, which I gave up because I wanted to practice in Supreme Court. I had a decent practice in Calcutta, which I gave up. And like people thought I was completely crazy when I did that. But I shifted to Supreme Court. I was again reduced to traveling in autos after having a decent practice in Calcutta. Then I left my car back at home because I said that, you have to rough it up. You have to start again from scratch. And I didn't want to live beyond my means. So I was again reduced to traveling in autos. While my friends who were very successful lawyers because they'd stayed there from day one in Supreme Court, were driving Mercedes-Benzes and Audis. So, you could be frustrated. And I still think there are friends of mine who are doing much more than I am, much more successful, much more wealthy, have more cases than I am. But in the profession, you can't look at them. You can't look at anyone but yourself. Look at your way. If you're good, people will recognize you. And in the end, you're only answerable to yourself. It's your profession, your family. And as for the accolades, the wonderful, the claps and the recognition from the court, in the end, they're all irrelevant. All irrelevant. You have to deal with your family. You have to deal with yourself as a person. And believe me, this is the truth of it all. Irrespective of whatever people think, being successful, being horribly recognized, making lots of money doesn't make you a happy person. It's not. You have to enjoy your profession. That's my view. And if success and wealth and everything comes, it does. What I'm saying is controversial. Others may not agree with me, but if it comes, it comes. If it doesn't, well then, as I always tell my mother, who's seen very hard times at times in our lives before and she always is afraid that everything like this, what we've got, will go again. And she said, oh, you're spending too much, everything will go, everything will disappear again. And I always say, that's fine. You live it as you're living. And tomorrow, if nothing, we reduce to where we were, we'll live it. And that's the most important truth of it. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. That was beautiful. Now I would like to call upon Gurishmeet to propose the vote of thanks.
Good evening, sir. Sir, that was a wonderful session where all the wannabe litigators listened to the one of the best in the industry. Mr. Banerjee has truly made a mark in the litigation world as well as on the every student present here. It has been such an honor to listen to your words of wisdom himself, and I am sure that all the queries and the blinding lights of all about the litigation are cleared out. I, on the behalf of the whole Samvaad team, would like to extend our highest regards and extremely in-depth thanks to Mr. Banerjee for taking out his precious time out of such a busy schedule. After such an insightful session, we are sincerely also looking forward to having you in our future webinars too. At last, I would like to thank all the attendees to make this webinar such a special. Once again, thanks to all. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.